this is an awesome day. We got some super amazing healthcare leaders here. Before we get going, why don't we just quickly introduce yourself? Jason, if you want to just open it up, just introduce yourself and each of you, please.
Sure, absolutely. Hey, Michael, nice to meet you and excited to be here. I'm Jason Hockman. I am founder of Next Level Partners. It's an executive consulting firm. In my experience over the last 17 plus years has been in the digital health space. Started my career early on at ZocDoc. I was there as early founding member and was there for 7 years. Worked at Capsule Pharmacy as their first head of sales. And most recently, I was at a company called Luna, helping them go from 4 people to 50 plus. And with all those learnings and my expertise, decided to kind of start my own thing and help several different companies at the same time. So for the last couple of months, I've been just helping other digital health companies really go from 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and helping them scale. So really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Vinay, you want to just real quick?
Yeah. Thanks, Michael, again for having us on. I'm Vinay, one of the co-founders here at Bonfire. And very quickly, my background's in healthcare, health tech. Worked at Stryker as a biomedical engineer, pivoted to early growth stage digital health, where, like Jason, I was also a kind of an early part of the sales team and selling to providers and payers. And then, co-founded Bonfire with my good friend here, Jaya. So he and I have known each other for a long time. We went to school together. We're both engineers, and then we took different paths, but came together around COVID, where we both had a shared vision for healthcare and data and what we can do, to kind of like help commercial teams be more effective in health tech, selling into providers and payers. So it was a natural complement of our backgrounds, and excited for this conversation today.
Cool. Jaya?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think I'm the non-sales guy here. My background is all data science. I've been a data scientist my whole career, from smaller startups to bigger tech companies, doing a lot of work in a lot of different areas of data science, from focusing on machine learning to focusing on extrapolating sample data to broader population level trends. And so, as Vinay mentioned, we started Bonfire together based on a shared vision we have. And I do a lot of work at Bonfire and really building out our data and our product.
Well, this is awesome. This is going to be data. We're going to create data insights from this conversation. We got Jason, who's going to be the 0 to 1 hero, starting at 0, scaling. So it's all about startups. Well, why don't we start with this whole challenge of selling into providers and payers? What does this look like? What is the challenge? And, who would like to start, Jason or Vinay?
Yeah, I can maybe kick it off and kind of share my experience, and would love to hear. I think Jason's got kind of a more broader exposure with different companies than I do, but definitely felt the kind of pain point firsthand, where a lot of these companies, when we say let's say health tech, like digital health, med device, and even life sciences companies, there's the status quo is there is a lot of an uphill battle that companies fight to sell into providers and payers. And it really boils down to, one, healthcare is highly regulated. So the decisions aren't made as quickly. So there's a lot of like aversion to risk. And so being able to be very targeted from a sales standpoint is important. And I think companies really struggle with that because and one of the pieces we're addressing here is, there is a lack of data on the overall market, so that companies know, who is their target customer, how do they reach them most effectively, that sort of thing. But I also think from my own kind of journey, there is no silver bullet in healthcare sales. There's generally long sales cycles. It's multiple stakeholders, whether you're selling to like a hospital, health system, payer. It takes time. It takes building relationships, and there are several pieces to it. But I would say those are kind of a few of the things that I noticed, at least in my journey. And I would love to hear how Jason either relates to that or has felt other challenges potentially too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vinay. Yeah. So the way I kind of think about, selling to providers, payers, health systems, they're all different paths, right? And it really comes down to the the custom profile, for me, as I think about building kind of go-to-markets and thinking about, how to connect with each kind of profile, it's essential to really understand kind of what's in it for them. So I always use WIFM when I think about kind of customer segmentation, just starting there. So, whether it's health systems, where it's really around understanding what their current issues are and how can my company solve those issues, right? So I think initially it's alignment on how are we as an organization going to help solve problems. And then, as you said, Vinay, it's a lot of making connections, building relationships, identifying the appropriate stakeholders, and building a use case, and truly having that connection that you can help make the health system's lives easier. And then things do take time, right? There's security reviews, there's things on the data side, there's things on IT, integrations, things like that. All these things take time, but is essential to build an internal roadmap of step-by-step what is needed in that journey to sell to each customer segment, and understanding who the key stakeholders are, and helping guide people in the direction to kind of get that deal done. And I kind of use that philosophy not only in the health systems world, in the payers world. It's about cost reduction, reducing utilization, things like that. And when it comes to the physician groups, again, I've done this my entire professional career, building revenue teams. This is really about, again, WIFM and what's in it for me, and how to solve problems and pain points at the physician group level. Whether you're selling a solo practitioner who's feeling, they're getting kind of crunched every single day, whether that's from reimbursements, whether other hospitals are taking patients from them, whatever that might be. But really, it's around understanding who your target profile is, and understanding their needs, desires, and how you can help them. And I think if you can build and connect the dots for them, you can build a strong value proposition and guide them through getting a kind of a mutual agreement, mutual partnership with them. And again, I think the thing that a lot of digital health companies forget to think about as they're scaling is the data piece. Who is the right profile? Do they have a clear definition of what that ideal customer profile is, right? So that ICP is mission critical as you're building a go-to-market strategy. So again, I could spend probably hours talking about this, but that's how I think about it, is understanding how I can help the customer segment, what is in it for them, and then mapping out a journey to help both of us get to that shared common goal of being successful.
Do we want to mention anything with Jaya with what some of the data mapping you do? I imagine the insights you can get on that journey, that where you come in, and forgive me if I'm outstepping my skis.
Yeah, no, I think Jason summarized it really well. Like, data and insights can probably help in a lot of different places in the sales cycle. There are times when it doesn't help, which I thought was a very good point, like when it comes to potentially other internal considerations. But this is where leveraging a lot of, whether it's publicly available data or data that you acquire from and insights that you get from a company like us at Bonfire, can be really valuable in the sales process. It can be valuable at the earliest stages for understanding the market, figuring out which providers fit that you should be targeting. And then as you get into the sale, really understanding more about who you're talking to. They'll inform you with knowledge that you need to go through the different stages of the sales cycle.
Yeah, I actually, wanted to follow up on Jason, what you shared, in terms of challenges and then definition of persona or ICP. How would you kind of compare that across ZocDoc, Capsule, Luna? It would be curious to hear, did you see common threads in terms of the challenges, and how different were kind of the ICP definition processes? How did that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vinay. I think in general, targeting physicians specifically is a challenge a lot of people face when building kind of go-to-markets, because doctors for the last 2+ decades are always being sold into by a lot of different companies, right? So I think it's very important to have a strong reason to kind of call, reason to engage, and reason to help them. So I do think that is very important as you think about the ICP. In today's modern world, our job as sellers is to help make their lives easier. So if you can help a doctor save time, right, operationally make things easier. So again, they get back some time, create some efficiencies on things, help them generate incremental revenue. These are all things that are interesting and can help generate stronger access, which I think is one of the most challenging things in healthcare, is actually getting access to the provider, physician group, and then as you go up market to larger systems, right, they have more admin, there's more people, stakeholders involved. And as you go into the payers and health systems, that is essential to, again, understand how are you going to create that value. And as you think about the ICP, it's really important to understand how you're going to make their lives easier. So like at ZocDoc, we iterated over many years on what is the right type of doctor looking for patient acquisition, how can we help prove immediate ROI when selling into doctors and being tactical that way. And that was a very transactional sale, because you were saying, you're offering, hey, I can help grow your practice. If we get a couple patients, it'll, the ROI is strong. When we went to Capsule, that was a completely different sell, because we were going to doctors' offices and we were educating them on the ability to refer their patients to a better pharmacy experience. And that's something that was never done before. I always would joke with during new hire training, when we brought new salespeople in, we grew our team from 2 people to 30 people. But I think the interesting thing there was we were there to take work off of the doctor's plates, make things easier for them, but we weren't asking them for a transaction. We were asking them to offer their patients a better experience. So that B2B to C, you had to build a lot of trust. You had to really get that opportunity for them to trust you to refer a patient. And nobody walks out of the pharmacy saying, wow, this was a magical experience walking out of Duane Reade in Midtown, right? Like, the reality is people will do that with the Capsule experience. And that was a thing that if you can wow them and delight them, that was exceptional. But again, that was a challenging, go to market. But we did it. And a lot of the team members that I hired several years ago are still kind of the founding team members there, which is great. And they've, made great successful careers over at that company.
Wow.
And then at Illuna, you're targeting more specialized physicians, and you're, again, identifying areas of opportunity where you can help them bring in a new technology and ultimately help them grow revenue and offer better care. So, for that, clinically, it was a win-win. And then the upside, the cherry on top, was always this thing was not going to lose them money. They were likely to make money on the technology.
Do we want to start getting into commercial strategy, like what that looks like? Maybe what it really is a disaster too. Sometimes the best way to know what is good is what isn't. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to take that first step. So a lot of times when I'm working with founders and speaking to VCs about their go-to-market, when should they hire their first salesperson? What type of doctor should we be selling to? What physician groups should we go up market? Should we start at the health system? Should we start? My philosophy has been, if you want some kind of quick wins, it's always going to be easier to bring your product to market on the commercial side, going to door to these SMB private practices, because there's not a lot of red tape, bureaucracy. Doctors typically can make a decision fairly quickly if they like what you're bringing to them. But I think what we're seeing in the market too is starting and getting some wins and traction is critical, right, for momentum. But you do want to move up market. You do want to move to these mid-market deals. You do want to move to health systems, because that's where these larger contracts come into play. There's more predictability with the business as well. And that's where, Vinay, Jai, and myself, we've spent a bunch of time just thinking through what type of companies are best suited, right, for Bonfire. And these early zero founder-led sales, right, they're trying to figure it out. We're trying to kind of help them go from 0 to 1. But once we can identify and lock down that customer segment, that ICP, there is I haven't seen data out there that is within reason of financial like pricing, right? Like there's companies out there like Definitive Healthcare. It's just expensive. And if you're a startup, you don't necessarily want to drop 50, 100K on that type of data, but being able to get slices of data and the packages I've seen with Bonfire, it's really helpful to be able to utilize some of the data to figure out who is the right type of customer to be targeting. So I've been a big believer of Bonfire Analytics and the work the team has been doing for several years now.
Yeah, really appreciate that, Jason. I actually have a follow-up question for you. So you mentioned that targeting these smaller practices are a good way to get started, potentially even test your hypotheses. Do you think that when you're building for these smaller practices, it's always a solution that can be scaled up to the health system level? Or could it be sometimes a trap? That's a solution that you're building that works really well for these smaller practices, but doesn't necessarily have the same impact or scales up to like the larger systems?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm a big believer in MVPs, right? So minimal viable product. I'm not going to be a perfectionist when it comes to just testing things out. It's test, iterate, and learn. But the idea is when you go and start kind of at the ground level, you're kind of testing your hypotheses. I think you're thinking about how I can bring this up market generally, but you also just want to get product market fit. You want to get some traction. You want to be able to prove ROI, demonstrate value. And once you can do those things really well, I think most early stage companies are thinking, well, what can I do next? And the learnings I've seen over the years is it's not a one size fits all, but if you can reduce and limit the amount of customization, right? Like you don't want to sell 5 SMB customers and do 5 different workflows and deliverables because that is not scalable. If you can come out the gate with kind of a one size fits all product that has kind of upsell potential at the upmarket level of a health system or an enterprise, whether it's a custom integration, well, it's there's different solutions that can be kind of built in. I think as long as you're not handcuffing yourself, you're allowing there's some flexibility as you move up market, because these larger clients will have custom workflows and different EHRs. So you might build one for a health system on the West Coast, but then they use a completely different system on the East Coast, a different client. And you don't want to, again, be handcuffed to doing one thing. You want to leave yourself flexible with the upside that like, hey, what I bring into this entry level SMB market, it's going to work. It can work 5 times, 10 times. Great. Now we should consider, we have some traction, right? As founders, we can go hire somebody. How do we move this up market? And thinking already ahead, what are the different things up market they want? They might want different access, different reporting, right? As you're thinking about building out your tools and systems. So again, it's always kind of thinking ahead, but definitely try not to sell too much into customization early on, because then you're building 10 different machines for 10 different companies, and that can become really challenging as an organization.
Yeah, I just want to relate to that too. I think one thing I learned when I was at Roundtrip was the value of having a stratified sales model, where it's like your SMBs are like your, the repeatable, like you can get a few of them closed, every now and then. The health systems, you may never know if they're going to truly come in or not because of how long it takes and decision making at the corporate level. And I think, like you said, once you have some of these use cases that can expand up market into a system where, in healthcare, it's the affiliations are so important to know about, right? The same group will be owned by or affiliated to a larger hospital network, a health system IDN. So getting the foot in the door, at the group level and then selling all the way up to the health system level allows for companies to like expand their ACV, but also while also not having to customize too much, because within the same network, ideally you'll have the same tech stack. So yeah, I definitely I totally agree with that. And going back to what you said, appreciate the kind words, in terms of like what we're building. I guess in terms of like tying that to a commercial strategy, I would be curious to hear, Jason, like talking about just raw data alone may not be like enough to build a strategy. Like, what are the kinds of insights you found that can be valuable to build a good one?
Yeah. So the way I kind of think about, again, 0 to 1 is I'm kind of just I always think about bootstrapping the business. Let's not spend money. Let's go kind of test some hypotheses. So what I always love doing early on at these early stage companies, and most companies I've joined have always been around Series A, where they have a little bit of traction, and we're not willing to write the big check to like figure out like what is the perfect data. We'll typically start from the ground level, which is like scraping data, which I think now there's a lot of technologies out there to probably do that faster. But the old school way, a quick Google search, and using websites and leveraging different avenues is just putting together your initial kind of target list of customers in healthcare as providers. So what is the type of specialty we're going to be calling on, spending time with, understanding who those providers are, what they care about. Again, it always to me goes back to that ICP and really understanding who they are and what they're looking for and how we can help make their lives easier. And then I think once you've built your target list of 50, 100 customers, to me, it's, get out there, and that's where the rubber meets the road. And this is where sales becomes kind of that grind, but you're going out there, you're meeting customers, you're bringing your product to market, you're getting feedback, good, bad, ugly. You're bringing this feedback, back to your company, and you're kind of iterating on that. And I think once you start getting your first, get your first deal, right? You get your first couple deals in, you start thinking about scale. I'm a big believer in, obviously, a data-driven approach is the right approach. But early on, sometimes like you have to go off intuition and gut, and you have to have kind of this feel. There's absolutely an art and science behind everything I build and do. But what I would say to thinking about at what point do you use data is you want people to work smarter. You don't want them to work harder. So I never ask somebody to target 300 customers and let's go find out, right, like who the right ones are and who the right ones aren't. Like, let's start small. Let's again, some of my slogans are, let's crawl before we walk before we run. So when it comes to kind of scrubbing and prospecting, it's let's start small. Let's figure out what kind of good looks like. And then when we start circling in on some of these kind of our win rate, we could then kind of find what are those characteristics. What do these doctors all share in common? Why are they buying? Right? And then why are people not buying? And what are the commonalities there? And are these, again, what other things do they share in common? Is it private practice? Are they a private equity backed group that is looking to kind of buy up more locations and more sites and more clinics, and then flip it in a couple of years, and they're trying to grow EBITDA on revenues? So I'm always a believer in kind of start small, but then there's always this kind of tipping point where, okay, now we're in 2 markets, 4 markets, 6 markets, and expanding on that. There's, again, the idea of at some point it makes sense to start using data and you want to be able to find those commonalities early on as you're building your kind of war chest of what the ICP kind of looks like. And you want to really double down and invest and kind of work very closely with your kind of biz ops, sales ops team to kind of, again, help enable our sales force to be able to go find more of those winning customers and spend less time targeting the wrong customers.
Vinay, would you like to share a little bit, you and Jayo, with maybe some of your experience on that journey? I think might be kind of helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing Jason mentioned is there's 2 sides, right? One is the insights to be able to build a very curated and highly targeted list of initial prospects, super important for a few reasons, and drawing from my own experience too. Is the likelihood for conversion is obviously much higher if we have an ICP, getting that curated list that aligns with it is super valuable. The other thing that Jason touched on, which people don't think about as much, which is really important, is the time lost that you're avoiding by not going after the wrong targets. I did this a lot where without having the right data to sell, let's say to a given hospital, you get really far into the conversation with them until you realize actually it's not a good fit, right? And I often wish if I had a way to discern that up front, then I could have spent more of my time on the ones that are likely to convert. So sales teams, I think sometimes that's not as obvious of a thing that they think about. Is any lead is a good lead is not the right approach. It's actually, let's spend all our time with the leads that actually have some likelihood, and then ones we know that are not good, disqualifying upfront is really important. So that's just from my own experience, and that's, I think, filters into how we and approach our insights in our product at Bonfire, is really listening to who people are going after, their target patient profile, provider profile, payer profile, and then being able to get them that kind of highly curated list within a given region and MSA or state, so that they're not only going after the right folks, but avoiding the wrong ones, right? And I think that's something I just wanted to follow up on.
Yeah, definitely agree with that, Vinay. Actually, have some thoughts too. Yeah, I think, Jason, as you're saying, data can be used in multiple stages. At the very early stages, it can be used in conjunction with your domain knowledge or your gut to try to to create an initial hypothesis. And then it can be used to refine that hypothesis based on the early prospects accounts that you talk to. And then as you continue to grow, you can refine that hypothesis, or you can create a ICP, that ideal client profile, and start to scale by understanding which are the accounts, which are the practices, health systems that fit that ICP. One question for you, Jason, and this is something I think all founders, all companies of any stage, every industry think about, is when you have that product market fit and you can change how you're using data, using it from more exploratory, or using it from trying out different hypotheses, to using data to scale. When have you seen is that point when that the strategy is the way you're leveraging data, and whether you have product market fit? At what point do you typically know that?
Yeah, that's a great question. How I think about that inflection point, right? Which is, okay, we've gone from zero. Now we're, depending on your ACV, your sales cycle, things like that. I'm looking for some signals. I'm looking at kind of pipeline. How does our existing pipeline look, right? But typically, if I can cross $1 million in ARR, and I have a repeatable process, whether, again, this is these are, the ACV could be 10, 20K, it could be 50, 100K. I need to get a clear idea of how many deals will it take me to cross that $1 million ARR milestone. And, I started kind of asking my question, well, how can I get to 2 faster than I got to 1? And how can I get to 5 faster than I got to 2? How can I get to 10 faster than I got to 5? So I think the organization has to be all invested from a commercial go-to-market strategy that you will have to invest here. And I think that's a big thing that not everybody really fully understands, that it's about working smarter and not always working harder, because there are companies out there that can help you identify more of the right leads, right? In sales, it's a game of, if you have 10 leads that you're calling on, go find the 7 that are no's, and you want the 3 that are yeses, and you want to go put everything you got into those 3 yeses and figure that out. And once you can, again, identify trends, commonalities, then how do you utilize that? And then how do you work with a vendor who can help you get the specialized data, because it's, again, looking at some of the key assets that you've developed in your ICP and being able to find a partner who can help you do that. And now there's other companies out there that, you know, can give you large data sets, but they're not highly actionable. They're not super valuable. So for me, I'm kind of thinking, once I cross a $1 to $2 million ARR, depending on the sales cycle, deal velocity, I'm thinking, okay, the next milestone for the organization is going from 1 to 2, but then 2 to 5, and then 5 to 10. And I need to make sure that I'm accelerating our leads with the highest quality leads possible, because at the end of the day, my assets are my people, my resources are limited, and at some point you'll have to make the decision to invest in sales enablement and finding more of the right customers, and you want to be able to get to those no's faster.
So I imagine, you know, just from my standpoint, coming in, you know, there's so many layers within the insights that you guys can help with. And I'm sure on your own journey, because you're not only you having a product for the marketplace, but those insights for what are your offerings too. I imagine that's a huge thing, like the pricing of this product, the services, the levels. To me, I think, you know, we were talking a little bit about MVP. Do you want to share a little bit about that as a journey, as you're integrating this data and offering deeper insights to those potential customers that are selling into healthcare?
Yeah, I can provide some context there, Michael. So yeah, I think insights, you're right. There are many types of insights that can be value add, and you know, I think for us, it's what are the commercially actionable insights. I think that's what we've kind of focused on. And actually, we started with understanding what are the business questions that a given, you know, health tech company is looking to answer with data. And I think that's how we've been able to find, you know, what are the insights that can really be valuable, that, you know, people can use our product to get to in a more repeatable way. And I think some of those questions are, you know, what's the size of our addressable market? What are the regions and territories that we should focus on? Who are the target accounts that align with our ideal customer profile? How do I build a business case for, you know, a physician or group or hospital? I think those are the kinds of, you know, questions that, you know, our insights can help answer. You know, with a mix of, you know, the directory data that, you know, we mentioned before, you know, in terms of like having a map of every single provider or organization in the country, then looking at the claims data, right? You know, having a big and a comprehensive picture of, you know, people and patients who are getting, you know, certain diagnoses or procedures, you know, by which provider, you know, reimbursed by which payer, you know, for how much. A lot of those things, you know, we have in the foundational data, but then getting to the insights to answer those business questions is kind of how we've approached it. And if you think about it, like for any given company, they're not interested in probably, you know, 95+% of the actual total volume of data, right? And I think that's where having more data isn't necessarily the answer. It's actually translating the data to the insight. Like for example, you know, if I'm a company in the diabetes management space, I care about, you know, which patients are getting diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I want to know where are they getting treated today. I want to know what's their cost of care, right? So these are kinds of questions that are, you know, very much reliant on the right extrapolation or, you know, extraction of insights from the data. I think in terms of how we see ourselves as a partner, and, you know, our, you know, you asked about our journey with like our business model and all that. It's a great question. I think we're kind of still, you know, getting our hands around like what makes sense in a way that is, you know, delivers strong ROI for our customers. And I think for now we're, you know, really focused ourselves as having this standalone product. We have a web-based platform, but we separately are an extended analytics partner as well, because oftentimes companies need additional support beyond just having, you know, a product or the data. Is actually, you know, how can we help them get use of it in the most effective way? So yeah, that's how I kind of answer that.
What are some common problems you're seeing clients like that are really those core things that you can really help them accelerate with time and insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is actually echoes what Jason had mentioned in his journey too, right? It's at the initial stage, people don't want to do the spray and pray, or at least have a gut feeling that doing the spray and pray is not the most effective way to go to market. And so that's where I think we can add immediate value is, look, now you have a sense of, what's your market look like and who are the folks to focus on. I think that's where it starts. And then where it gets deeper is kind of like as the maturity of the sales organization grows, ideally they want to be partners for the providers they're selling to, right? They want to be trusted, kind of almost consultative folks. And that's where data and insights can be super helpful, where it can tell the story of like, if I'm going to a provider org, I already know their payer mix. I already know how many, patients that they might be seeing for a given condition. I know how much they're, getting in reimbursements or where are they referring patients to. That can really help shape the conversation in a valuable way. And I think that's how we've kind of, focused our product offering too, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would even, want to hear Jason's perspective on that. Like, I think there's like the way that companies need support changes over time as their sales org matures, and the kinds of insights they might need also, I imagine, would change. So I'd be curious to hear, what you think about that too, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think startups are ever evolving, right? That's one thing I've learned. Change is constant, and what you need today, you might not need tomorrow, and what you need tomorrow, you might not know you need to know. Like, you might not even know that you need that today. So the way I kind of think about it is always be thinking a couple steps ahead of kind of where the organization is. And I'm always trying to reverse engineer as a commercial leader, what is the end goal I'm trying to accomplish and how do I get there? And what are the things that are going to help me? So I think about levers, I think about tactics, I think about tools, I think about sales enablement. Again, in this environment with AI and the way things are moving so quickly, things that would take me 3 hours are now taking me 30 seconds. And now I get my 3 hours back, and it opens me up to think about these things more strategically. But again, I'm a big believer in kind of, rolling up your sleeves, identifying the early needs within the organization. You got to start somewhere, right? Like, you're not going to have all the bells and whistles from a tech stack. Sometimes, my early days at ZocDoc, I was given a computer and told, hey, go sign up 4 doctors by the end of the week, or else you might not have a job here. So the times have changed, right, in terms of what's needed. But, I think where there's a will, there's a way. And starting to utilize data early, it's not going to be pretty, but there's that, again, inflection point as a commercial leader to think about, hey, I've done a great job, but how am I going to do this even better in the near future, and what are my options? And those are the levers, and that's the tech stack, and that's the enablement around out there that can help you really accelerate your growth by utilizing technology, figuring out, again, what are the key characteristics or traits that you're looking for, and are there companies out there that can help accelerate your growth by identifying what they are. And you really need to know what those things are, right? Like, if you're targeting a specialist that does a type of visit with a provider, there's like very few places you can get that. So it's important to kind of figure out how to kind of be hyper focused on understanding your audience. So I keep talking about the ICP. You got to know them really well. You got to train your team really well on how to kind of understand who they are. You need to understand the WIFM, what's in it for me, selling to them. And then as you can figure that thing out, you start hitting a little bit of a wall where it's not going to make sense to go from 50 to 300 scrub leads. I need to, like, how do I get my best sellers, my workhorses, closing more deals? And the real answer always will come back to kind of that data analytics piece of how do we kind of put gasoline on the fire? How do we go from 2 to 5? That's usually my answer.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for that. That's super helpful, and also, yeah, cool to hear like your experiences early on at places like ZocDoc, right? I think it's validating, especially since that's a well-known name in healthcare. I actually had a question just based on what you shared about like, analytics being part of the DNA of a sales team as it grows. This is something that we've found does vary, and people, I don't know if there's a one size fits all answer here, but obviously having a clean scrubbed list helps get conversations going, or get a foot in the door, first sort of conversation with the provider or org. I'm curious, like, how have you approached like sales training when it comes to having the sales reps use or refer to data insights in the context of a sales conversation itself, right? And that's something that can come across in different ways, right? If you tell someone, hey, this is your data, there's obviously can be a sign of like, wait, how do you know that this is what I'm doing, right? So I guess I'm curious, like, how have you approached that in a way that's like tactful, that shows that you've done your homework, but not overstepping, like, and then kind of appearing as like, I know your, profile better than you do, type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a great lesson I learned early on was back in my Capsule days working with Eric. I think when we were going from 2 to 10 reps fairly quickly, like the name of the game was to grab as much land as possible and train the team. We just started from the ground up. We just started trying to figure out all the types of questions a new hire would ask across all departments. And we started building a presentation that went from, 5 slides to honestly 250 slides. And we call this our new hire onboarding playbook. And I use that from Capsule to every company I've been a part of. That becomes the epicenter of training, understanding the vision, the mission of the company. What do we do? Like, why are we here? What is my role as a sales rep? I think the more you can set up a framework and a structure. So I'm a big believer in process, right? So from a training standpoint, making sure people know what your role is, what expectations are, what good looks like, and making sure you can train them all the way from a CRM to our sales process, to role playing, to certifications. These are all things I believe take a company to the next level. It's not just, hey, here's a couple slides, here's a quick 30-minute presentation. We went from our new hire training from 1 day to 2 weeks, a lot of classroom training, a lot of shadowing different departments, certifications on what to expect, right? Whether you're shadowing the pharmacy or a role play scenario, those were all kind of part of this process. And the evolution of that comes into, building the best in class organizations. And what you're able to do is, from building a rigorous training program, scorecards on clear expectations, is enabling your team to be self-empowered to do their job at a high level. And then as a commercial leader, it is your job to help them work smarter. So I think about building lead scores, and a lot of the most successful companies I've been at have been able to effectively build a lead score, which will weed out lower value clients and really have you focus on higher level clients. And from my ZocDoc days, my Capsule days of kind of building this, to my Aluna days, to how I think about approaching new organizations, it's using data of our existing customers and finding other data sets out there to then build lead scores. So we're not wasting time on the lower tiered customers, and again, really focusing on that higher tiered, and then teaching the reps to look at some of the data that we have. There's a lot of insights and learnings, but the more you can train people on what good looks like, hold them accountable, and continue to train them on being successful. When sales reps are making money, when they're hitting quota, when the team is winning, the company wins, everybody wins. So my goal is always to align on proper training, proper expectation setting, being a servant leader, helping people and giving people the tools to be successful. And it's ongoing. It's not a 2-week, hey, let's set you up for success. It's, hey, let's have a check-in every 2 weeks. Let's get you a mentor who's already been in your position to be successful. Let's show you how to really use the CRM. I noticed you didn't log your notes correctly. Where are you having problems? So you want to come from a place of caring and empathy, while also using the data to teach them what good looks like, is how you kind of build really strong habits within your organization. And once you start getting a little bit of momentum, that stuff is contagious. And I've been really fortunate to be a part of some great companies that, again, went from 0 to 1, 1 to 5, and hit, 2 companies hit unicorn status while I was kind of there in a senior, revenue, leadership capacity. So there's a lot of data out there today that wasn't out there 10, 15 years ago. And it's important to kind of capitalize on that.
Awesome. Yeah, that was great.
So while we're sort of, I guess, coming towards the end, that was really helpful, Jason, about culture and really creating, what good looks like and metrics, keeping people accountable organizationally. Vinay and Jay, what I think what would be really cool is for you guys to share a little bit of your journey today here on this, your lessons that you've learned, bringing, you starting with your clients, bringing them in. And I know when you started to where you are now, there's been a transformation, just kind of what those insights are from your organization and your partners that you've really supported. I think people can't hear enough of what your organization looks like and what you're doing to help companies. I mean, if there's no sales, we know the answer to what happens to an organization.
Thanks, Michael. I think, there's probably, so much to get into in the last few minutes here, but I think, Jay and I have kind of like learned that, like he asked a question about product market fit. I think that's an ongoing journey, right? You always want to see what's the pain point, how can we help people really address it in a way that's integrated into their day-to-day workflow. And that's something that really drives us, every day. And, hearing, Jason talk about how analytics was part of the DNA of an org and how that led to success, we want to help companies replicate that as much as possible. And I think that's something that's kind of core to us. And yeah, I think other than that, for us as an org, having the right team is so super important. We were proud to have like a lean and mean team of 5 full-time folks, we've really been proud of, having such a great team to work with here. We have a founding engineer, his name's Dennis. There's Janine, who's our data scientist, Abrar, who's our growth lead. I think between the 5 of us, we feel like we all relate to the problem we're solving for and are excited to kind of bring value to customers. So I think, those are the 2 things, is like, finding your way to product market fit in a way that actually solves a problem, and then also having a strong team to take on this opportunity. So I would say those 2 things.
Yeah, it's funny because we help tech companies find their ICP and then scale on that ICP, but we're in a way have to find our own ICP too. And so there's something meta there. And so like, as we were building the Bonfire the last like about 2.5 years now, we've had iterations of what we were building to what we are now. It hasn't always been what we're doing now. When we started off, we were actually really interested in focusing on contact information, trying to get all the like healthcare contacts, emails, phone numbers, LinkedIn profiles for people like for like practitioners and executives in healthcare. But then that was not we felt the best space or the biggest need in the market. Like there's tools that exist that might not be perfect, but do really good jobs in providing contact information like ZoomInfo. But then where we saw there was a bigger need was more in the analytics and helping with like more of that data-driven. Health tech companies take a more data-driven approach to go to market. And so that's when we shifted away from focusing on contact info to what we're doing now, more of the analytics on doing a lot of work with medical claims data, pharmacy claims data, social determinants of health data, and then leveraging all of these different and diverse data sets to help health tech companies, our customers, with their go-to-market strategy. And so it was an iterative process even for us to like get to the point where we are now. And there's still more to figure out, which is what I was really curious to hear about Jason's experience of when you have product market fit and when you scale, because we're in a way trying to still find that or are getting closer to it, but it's hard to know when is the time to, even for us, to that we're there. And so yeah, it's been definitely been a journey, and we've explored a lot of different ideas even on our end.
Well, Jason, did you want to add, or do any of you want to add to that?
I think they did a good job covering that one.
Well, this has been awesome, and I will say, from what you just said, Jay, I think when you dig deeper into that really deep insights, rather than just contact list, you've evolved, and I can imagine you're going really helping companies go deeper and further and faster and better. So I'm not an expert on Stardust, but it sounds like you guys are doing some really cool stuff. I'm so glad you guys could come on today. I really appreciate you coming and sharing everything you're doing. And I'd love to have you on again further up. I don't know what that conversation would be because you guys are moving so fast and doing great things. I don't know. What do you think that next conversation might be or look like?
Yeah, not sure at the moment, to be honest. I think we'll have to see. I think what might be a good topic. I mean, there's so many things in healthcare to kind of go through. We've also been kind of analyzing different markets. We talked about GLP-1s, in a previous post. So maybe something more topical like that could be fun.
GPL is going AI rogue or something. I don't know. Cool. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
And thanks, Jason. Good to see you.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.